I always believed the funeral was the end of the tragedy, but my brother Ethan decided it was merely the opening statement, standing in my office lobby with a process server staring at me. I realized grief was no longer a private ache. It was a litigable offense. Ethan did not just want the antique clock or mother's pearls. He was suing me for unlawfully possessing my own memories, and he had the expensive lawyers to prove I had stolen them. The process server did not look like an agent of destruction. He looked like a man who was thinking about his lunch break, a guy with a slightly fraying collar and comfortable shoes who stepped into the lobby of the mid-sized logistics firm where I worked as if he were delivering a pizza. I was at the front desk covering for the receptionist, sorting through a stack of invoices, when he asked for Claire King. When I identified myself, he handed me a thick manila envelope, gave a polite nod that felt incongruous with the weight of what he had just done, and walked out into the bright Tuesday morning of Ashford Heights. My hands did not shake immediately. That is a detail people add to stories later to make them sound dramatic. In reality, I stood there feeling a strange, hollow numbness, watching dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight hitting the linoleum. I opened the flap. The first page was heavy, high-bond paper. The header was bold and centered, listing the plaintiff and the defendant. Plaintiff, Ethan James King. Defendant, Claire Marie King. The words swam for a second before snapping into a terrible focus. My brother was suing me. I took the papers to the break room, my heart finally starting to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I sat at the wobbly round table and read the complaint. It was written in a language that stripped all humanity from our lives, turning a childhood of shared summers and an adulthood of complex grief into a series of transactional failures. The suit alleged unlawful detainer, conversion of estate property, and unjust enrichment. It claimed I had removed heirlooms, jewelry, and estate assets from our mother's home without authorization. It claimed I had accessed a storage unit at Pinecrest Storage and removed items that belonged to the trust. Every paragraph was a fresh slap. He listed things I recognized: the silver tea service, the sapphire pendant, the quilt our grandmother stitched. He called them assets. I called them the things Mom had pressed into my hands over the last decade, saying, "Keep this safe for me," or, "This brings out your eyes. Claire, take it. I left work early. I could not sit there answering phones while my brother tried to legally redefine me as a thief." Dana Mercer's office was nothing like the high-rise glass fortress where Ethan's lawyers likely operated. It was located on the second floor of a brick walk-up in the older part of Ashford Heights, directly above a bakery that specialized in sourdough and cinnamon rolls. The staircase smelled of yeast and caramelized sugar, a warm, comforting scent that felt at odds with the cold dread sitting in my stomach. Dana was a small woman with sharp eyes and hair pulled back in a no-nonsense clip. She did not have a mahogany desk. She had a table covered in organized piles of files. She read through Ethan's complaint in silence, her expression giving nothing away. I sat across from her, gripping my purse, waiting for her to tell me this was a mistake, that judges did not let brothers do this to sisters. Finally, she looked up. "This is aggressive," she said. Her voice was calm, lacking the performative outrage I wanted but offering the stability I needed. "He is not just asking for the items back. He is asking for damages, legal fees, and a forensic accounting of your finances." "My finances?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I work in logistics. I rent a condo. I drive a 6-year-old sedan. What is there to account for?" "That is not the point," Dana said. She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "Claire, you need to understand the landscape of what is happening here. This is not about the law in the traditional sense. If we went to trial on the merits, we could likely prove many of these gifts were valid, especially if there are witnesses or photos. But litigation is expensive." She tapped the heavy paper with her index finger. "Ethan King knows you do not have $50,000 to spend defending the ownership of a quilt." She said, "He is counting on the fact that the process itself will bankrupt you or break you emotionally before you ever step inside a courtroom. He is buying your exhaustion." I felt a cold flush of shame. Ethan had always used money as a way to control the temperature of a room, but weaponizing it like this felt violated. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Give him everything? Even the things Mom gave me for my 30th birthday?" "No," Dana said firmly. "We answer. We deny the allegations. We make him work for it. But I need you to be prepared. He has hired Wexler and Rowe. They are a shark firm. They will paper us to death. They will send interrogatories, requests for production, subpoenas. They will try to make you feel like a criminal in your own life." I looked at the window, where the afternoon light was fading. I thought of Ethan, 7 years older than me, always the one who knew the right answer, the right fork to use, the right investment to make. "He hates that I have them," I said quietly. "It is not about the value. He hates that Mom gave them to me and not him." Dana nodded. "In family law, it is rarely about the objects. It is about who was loved more." My apartment was usually my sanctuary. It was a modest 2-bedroom unit on the edge of town. Filled with secondhand furniture I had refinished myself and plants that I managed to keep alive through sheer stubbornness. But that evening, walking in, it felt different. It felt like a crime scene waiting to be processed. I made tea I did not drink. I paced. Finally, I went to the closet in the spare room and pulled out the box. It was a heavy plastic bin, the kind you buy at a hardware store when you have to clear out a house in a weekend. It was the only box from Mom's house I had not unpacked since the funeral 6 months ago. I had taped it shut and shoved it behind my winter coats, telling myself I would get to it when I was stronger. I cut the tape with a kitchen knife. The smell of her perfume, lavender and old paper, wafted up, and my throat tightened so hard it hurt. Inside, it was a chaotic jumble of the end of a life. There were stacks of condolence cards I'd been too exhausted to read. There was a binder of medical bills from her last stay at the hospital. There were dried flowers from the service, crumbling into dust at the bottom of the bin. I sifted through it, my hands trembling again. I found a scarf she wore constantly, the silk cool against my fingers. I found a stack of paperback mysteries she loved. And then, at the bottom, sandwiched between a hymnal and a stack of recipes, was a thick cream envelope. It was unassuming. On the front, in her looping, distinctive script, she had written, "For later, when you are ready." I held it for a long time. I was not sure if I was ready. I was not sure I would ever be ready. But Ethan's lawsuit had forced my timeline. I placed the envelope on my coffee table, staring at it. I did not open it yet. The energy required to break that seal felt like more than I had left in the tank that night. Just knowing it was there, a message from her that Ethan did not know about, gave me a tiny sliver of ground to stand on. The sight of the condolence cards triggered a memory I had been suppressing. A loop of the funeral week that I tried to keep behind a mental firewall. I closed my eyes and I was back there. The church parlor. The air conditioning was too high. A frigid blast that made everyone shiver in their black clothes. Ethan was standing by the floral arrangements, directing the funeral director like he was managing a merger. I had wanted lilacs. Mom loved lilacs. Ethan had ordered white lilies, hundreds of them, stiff and formal and devoid of scent. "No," Ethan had said when I suggested the change. "Lilacs are messy. They shed. We want this to be dignified." Claire, dignified, that was his word. He moved through the room, shaking hands, accepting sympathies with a practiced, solemn nod. I stood in the corner, feeling like a raw nerve ending. I had spent the last 3 months sleeping in a chair by Mom's hospital bed, holding her hand, washing her hair. Ethan had visited on weekends, checking his watch, making sure the doctors were competent. But here, in this room, he was the grieving son, the pillar of strength. I saw him talking to Aunt Linda, his hand on her shoulder. He leaned in, his voice dropping to that confidential register he used when he was closing a deal. "We are worried about Claire," I heard him say. "She is taking this very hard. You know how she gets. A little fragile. We just want to make sure she does not make any rash decisions." Aunt Linda had looked at me with pity, a look that said, "Poor thing. She can't handle it." Ethan had planted the seed before the soil was even turned over her grave. He was casting me as the unreliable narrator of my own grief. The vibration of my phone on the wooden table snapped me out of the memory. It was 11 at night. The screen lit up with a single name: Ethan. I stared at it. Dana had not told me not to talk to him, but common sense screamed that I should let it go to voicemail. But the habit of being the younger sister, the habit of answering when the big brother calls, was deep in my marrow. I picked it up. "Hello? Ethan, Claire." His voice was smooth, calm, no anger. It was the voice of a man who believes he is being entirely reasonable. "I assume you received the documents." I did. I said, "I was standing in my kitchen, clutching the edge of the counter. You sued me. Ethan, you sent a process server to my job. I tried to call you last week." He said, ignoring the accusation, "You did not pick up. I had to ensure the estate's interests were protected." "The estate," I said. "It is Mom's stuff. Ethan, it is the necklace she wore to my graduation. It is the quilt we watched movies under. It is not an estate. It is property. Claire," he corrected gently, "and it has value. Value that needs to be cataloged and distributed according to the law. You just went in and took things. You went to the storage unit. You emptied shelves. That is not how this works. I took what she gave me." I said, my voice rising, "I have not been to the storage unit since before she died." There was a pause on the line, a silence that felt heavy and judgmental. "Look," he said, his tone shifting to something softer, almost conspiratorial. "I do not want to do this. I do not want to drag you through court. I know you do not have the resources for a fight like this. It is going to be ugly. Claire, public, then drop it." I said, "I can't do that." He said, "Fiduciary duty, but I can offer you a settlement. Simple. You return the items listed in the complaint, all of them, and you sign a statement acknowledging that you removed them in error. We call it a misunderstanding caused by grief. I will even cover your legal filing fees." I felt the trap snap shut. He wanted me to sign a confession. He wanted a piece of paper where I admitted I was a thief, where I admitted I was the unstable, grabby sister he had told everyone I was. "And if I don't?" I asked. He sighed, a long exhale of disappointment. "Then we go through the process. And Claire, you know I am thorough. If we do this, I will have to look at everything, your debts, your history, everything. I am trying to save you from yourself." I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The threat was not subtle. He was going to burn my life down to get a tea set, just to prove he could. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and anxiety. Dana gave me a task that felt like a punishment. I had to inventory my own home, go room by room, she had said. Photograph everything he is claiming. Write down when you got it, who was there, and why you have it. I spent Saturday morning with a notepad and a camera, moving through my apartment like an insurance adjuster. I started in the bedroom. The jewelry box. Item: gold locket with a chip in the enamel. Origin: Mom gave it to me when I turned 16. She said it was her mother's. Proof: a photo from my 16th birthday party. I am wearing it. Ethan is in the background, looking bored. I moved to the living room. The quilt. Item: patchwork quilt, blue and white star pattern. Origin: Mom made it. She gave it to me when I moved into my first apartment. She said, "So you'll always be warm." Proof: none, really. Just the memory of her pressing it into my arms. It was excruciating. Every object was a story, and Ethan was forcing me to strip the story away and look at the object as a commodity. He was making me put a price tag on love. I realized, with a sick feeling, that there were things he was claiming that I did not even have. He listed a set of silver candlesticks. I had never seen them. He listed a diamond brooch. I remembered Mom wearing it, but she had never given it to me. Why was he suing me for things I did not possess? Was he paranoid? Or was he setting me up to fail? knowing I could never return what I never took. On Tuesday, I took a half-day off work to go to the courthouse. Dana had called me with bad news. Ethan had filed additional motions. I met her in the probate clerk's office, a room that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. Dana looked tired. He filed for an emergency writ of possession, she said, handing me a document. He is claiming that there is a distinct risk you will sell, hide, or destroy the assets before the trial. He wants the sheriff to seize them immediately. I read the motion. The language was infuriating. Defendant has a history of financial instability. Defendant is currently employed in a low-wage position and lacks significant assets. Risk of flight. He is painting me as desperate, I said, looking up at Dana. He makes me sound like a junkie selling silver spoons for rent money. I pay my bills. Dana, I have a 401k. It is small, but I have one. It is a narrative, Dana said. We will counter it. We will show your pay stubs, your credit score. But Claire, he is moving fast. He wants to overwhelm us. I looked around the clerk's office. People were filing wills, marriage licenses, deeds, normal life administration. And here I was, fighting a war I didn't start. I need to see the file. I said, all of it. The clerk, a woman with glasses on a chain who looked like she had seen every variety of family dysfunction, handed over the thick folder. I flipped through the pages. Ethan's signature was on everything. Bold, aggressive loops. He had signed a declaration stating he had personal knowledge that I had entered the storage unit on dates I was definitely at work. He is lying, I whispered. Proving it is the hard part, Dana said. The first court date arrived 2 weeks later. It was just a scheduling hearing. Dana had told me, a formality to set dates for discovery and motions. But I insisted on coming. I needed to see him. I needed him to look me in the eye. The Ashford Heights Civil Court was a mix of modern architecture and old stone, a building designed to make you feel the weight of the state. I wore my best blazer, a charcoal gray one I had bought for interviews, and black slacks. I brushed my hair until it shone. I would not look like the frazzled, unstable woman he described in his filings. I walked in with Dana. The hallway was crowded with lawyers and litigants. And then I saw them. Ethan was standing near the courtroom doors. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car. The tailoring was impeccable. He looked tan, rested, and utterly in command. Surrounding him were 3 other men in suits. They looked like a phalanx of Dobermans in silk ties. They were holding leather briefcases and checking tablets. This was Wexler and Rowe. They were a corporate firm, the kind that handled mergers and high-stakes liability defense. Ethan had brought a tank to a knife fight. He was laughing at something one of the lawyers said, a polite, rich laugh. Then he saw me. The smile didn't exactly drop, but it froze. He nodded, a microscopic acknowledgement of my existence. He did not come over. He did not say hello. He turned his back and resumed his conversation with his team. I felt small. I felt like a child who had wandered into a boardroom. Dana touched my elbow. Chin up, she whispered. Do not let them see you flinch. We went into the courtroom. The hearing was short. The judge, a balding man with a bored expression, looked at the mountains of paper Ethan's team had already filed. He set dates. He denied the emergency seizure request for now, stating there was no immediate proof of risk, which felt like a tiny victory until I saw Ethan's lawyer smirk. They didn't care. They had plenty of other motions ready to go. As we walked out, the adrenaline was starting to crash into fatigue. I needed fresh air. On the courthouse steps, I saw a familiar figure. It was Aunt Sarah, Mom's younger sister. She was walking toward the entrance, clutching her purse. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. Aunt Sarah, I called out, stepping forward, relief washing over me. A friendly face. Family. She stopped. She looked at me. And then, she looked at the ground. Sarah? I said, faltering. She adjusted her grip on her purse and turned her body slightly away from me. I can't. Claire, she mumbled, her voice tight. Ethan told us about the situation. We just think it is better if we don't get involved until you make things right. Make things right? I repeated, stunned. Sarah, he is suing me. She looked up then, and her eyes were hard. He says you cleared out the storage unit. Claire, your mother's things, that is not right. You should not have done that. Before I could answer, before I could scream that I hadn't done it, she hurried past me, head ducked, vanishing into the revolving doors. I stood on the concrete steps, the wind whipping my hair across my face. Ethan had gotten to them. He had poisoned the well. He hadn't just sued me for property. He was systematically dismantling my support system. He was isolating me, stripping away my credibility one relative at a time, until I was exactly what he claimed I was: alone, desperate, and wrong. Dana came up beside me. She didn't say anything. She just waited. I watched the cars drive by on the street below. I thought about the envelope on my coffee table. For later, I am not settling, I said, my voice trembling but loud enough for Dana to hear. I know, she said. I turned back to look at the courthouse doors where my aunt had disappeared. He wants a fight? I said. I'm going to give him one. The war did not start with a scream. It started with a printer. For the next 3 weeks, my life became measured in reams of paper. Dana filed my response, a crisp and defiant denial of every accusation Ethan had levied. But Ethan's team at Wexler and Rowe responded with a strategy Dana called papering the file. It was a scorched earth tactic designed to bury us, every day. The mail carrier delivered thick envelopes containing interrogatories, requests for production of documents, and demands for admissions. They wanted everything. They wanted my bank statements from the last 5 years. They wanted receipts for every piece of furniture in my apartment. They wanted text messages between me and our mother dating back to 2020. The deadlines were tight, calculated to make me panic, to make me miss a single receipt so they could stand in court and call me negligent. I spent my evenings on the living room floor, surrounded by shoeboxes of receipts and stacks of old phone bills, highlighting dates with a yellow marker until my eyes burned. It was a forensic audit of my entire existence. Ethan was not just suing me, he was dissecting me. He was looking for a loose thread he could pull to unravel my credibility. One Tuesday night, after hours of scanning utility bills, I sat back against the sofa, rubbing my temples. The silence of the apartment felt heavy. My eyes drifted to the coffee table, to the cream-colored envelope I had taken from the condolence box. For later, when you are ready. I had been afraid to open it. I had been afraid it was a goodbye letter, a final emotional weight I was not strong enough to carry while fighting a lawsuit. But as I looked at the legal chaos surrounding me, I realized I was already carrying the weight. I reached out and picked it up. The paper was high quality, the kind Mom used to buy at the stationery store downtown. I slid my finger under the flap and tore it open. Inside, there was no tearful goodbye. There was a document. It was 3 pages long, handwritten in her impeccable, looping script. The header at the top read, Personal Property Memorandum. I frowned. I knew what a will was. I knew what a trust was. I did not know what this was. I began to read, to my children, Ethan and Claire. The letter began. I am writing this to clarify the distribution of my personal effects. The things that hold memory, rather than monetary value. I have attached this list to my will by reference, and it is my express wish that these items go to the specific persons listed below. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scanned the list. It was dated 8 months before she died. It was signed, and it was specific. Item, the sapphire pendant necklace. Recipient, Claire, to wear at her wedding, or whenever she needs courage. Item, the grandfather clock in the hallway. Recipient, Ethan, please keep it wound. Item, the collection of first edition mystery novels. Recipient, Claire. Item, the silver tea service. Recipient, Ethan. I read faster, my breath catching. The list contradicted nearly half of Ethan's claims. He was suing me for the sapphire pendant, claiming I had stolen it from the estate. But here, in black and white, Mom had given it to me. He was demanding the return of the mystery novels, claiming they were valuable antiques. Here, they were mine. Then I saw the entry that made me gasp. Item: the Victorian vanity set. Brush, mirror, comb. Recipient: donated to the Ashford Women's Shelter. January 15th, 2025. I froze. In the lawsuit, Ethan listed the Victorian vanity set as missing property. He claimed I had taken it and sold it. He had valued it at $4,000 and demanded I repay the estate, but Mom had given it away while she was still alive. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of the page. My hands shaking so hard the first image was blurry. I took another. Then I called Dana. "I know it is late," I said when she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "But you need to see what I just found." The memorandum changed the texture of the air in Dana's office the next morning. She laid the pages out on her desk, smoothing them with a reverence usually reserved for religious texts. "This is admissible," she said, her eyes scanning the lines. "In our state, a personal property memorandum that is referenced in a will or trust is legally binding for tangible personal property. Did the will mention a memorandum?" "I do not know." I said, "Ethan never showed me the full will. He just read me the parts about the financial split being 50-50. Dana made a note on her legal pad. "We will demand the full testamentary documents. If the will references this, Ethan is in trouble. He is suing you for items he has no right to." "And this donation entry?" "This is the smoking gun. He swore under penalty of perjury that the vanity set was in the house when she died, and that you took it. This proves he falsified the inventory." She looked up at me, a rare smile touching her lips. "Good work, Claire. This is a shield. Now we need a sword. We need to corroborate the other items. Photos, videos, anything that shows her intent." I spent the weekend digging into the digital past. I connected my old hard drives to my laptop, sifting through terabytes of memories. It was a painful archaeology. I watched videos of Christmas mornings, hearing Mom's laugh, seeing Ethan smile in a way he hadn't smiled in years. I found it in a video from my 31st birthday. We were in her kitchen. The cake was on the table. Mom was holding a small box. I pressed play, watching my younger self unwrap the tissue paper. It was the gold bracelet Ethan was currently claiming was estate property. In the video, Mom leaned in, her face clear and bright. "This was your great aunt's," she said on the recording. "I want you to have it now. Claire, it is yours. Do not let anyone tell you it is too fancy for everyday wear." I paused the video. "It is yours." I felt a fierce, hot anger rising in my chest. Ethan knew. He had been there. I could hear his voice in the background of the video, making a joke about the frosting. He had watched her give it to me. And now, 3 years later, he was paying a lawyer $400 an hour to write a motion claiming I had pilfered it from a dead woman's jewelry box. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a lie, a deliberate, calculated lie. Dana advised me to check every allegation involving third parties. Ethan's lawsuit claimed I had accessed the storage unit at Pinecrest Storage 3 times in the month following the funeral. He listed the dates. He claimed I had removed boxes of financial records and antique linens. I knew I hadn't been there. I didn't even have the gate code. I drove to Pinecrest Storage on a Wednesday afternoon. It was a sprawling facility on the edge of town, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The office smelled of dust and stale popcorn. The manager was a young guy named Kevin, wearing a polo shirt that was too big for him. He looked up from his phone as I walked in. "Can I help you?" he asked. I explained that I was a co-executor of my mother's estate. A half-truth, but necessary, and I needed to see the access logs for Unit 412. I can't give out that info without the account holder's permission. Kevin said, reciting the line automatically. "My name is Claire King." I said, "I pulled out my driver's license. My brother, Ethan King, is the account holder. We are in the middle of a legal dispute regarding the property, and there seems to be a discrepancy about who accessed the unit. If you can't show me, I can have my lawyer subpoena them, which will involve your corporate legal team." Kevin hesitated. The threat of corporate involvement usually worked on people who just wanted a quiet shift. He typed something into his computer. Unit 412. He muttered, "Okay, I see the logs here. Can you tell me if my name appears on any entry?" I asked. He scrolled, "Nope, just Ethan King. And, well, the code used was the primary code, but we have notes here." "Notes?" I asked. "Yeah," Kevin said. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Look, I remember this unit. There was some weirdness a few months ago. A guy came in, said he was Mr. King's assistant, had a letter of authorization. We let him in." I felt a chill. "What did he look like?" "Tall, dark hair, expensive suit," Kevin said, driving a black SUV. "But the weird thing was, he didn't take boxes. He brought a rolling suitcase, like a big travel one. Empty when he went in, heavy when he came out." "And when was this?" I asked. Kevin checked the screen. "November 12th, 2 weeks after your mom passed." My stomach turned over. November 12th. That was one of the dates Ethan claimed I had been there. "Did he say anything?" I asked. "Yeah," Kevin said. "He asked for a private moment near the unit. Asked me to turn off the hallway camera for maintenance while he was moving things. Said it was sensitive legal documents. I told him I couldn't do that. But he was persuasive. I didn't turn off the camera. But I went to the back office so he'd feel like he had privacy. My mind raced. Ethan, or someone working for him, had gone into the unit with a suitcase. They had removed things. And now, Ethan was accusing me of the theft. He was projecting his own actions onto me. "Can I get a copy of those logs?" I asked. "And is there footage?" "Footage overwrites every 30 days, Kevin said, looking apologetic. "But I can print the logs. They show the code entry." I walked out of Pinecrest storage holding a piece of paper that proved the access code used was Ethan's, not mine. But the image of the suitcase haunted me. What had he taken? And why hide it in a suitcase unless it was something he didn't want anyone, even his own lawyers, to see? The emotional attacks began the following week. It was a digital ambush. I was at work, trying to focus on a shipping manifest. When my phone buzzed, it was a text from my cousin Julie. We weren't close, but we were friendly enough to exchange Christmas cards. The text was a screenshot. It was from a private Facebook group message involving several family members, aunts, cousins, people I had known my whole life. The message at the top was from Aunt Linda. "It is just so sad." Linda wrote, "Ethan is trying to keep it quiet. But apparently Claire took Mom's engagement ring to pay off some credit card debt. He is heartbroken. He just wants the ring back so it can stay in the family." Below it, a cousin had replied, "Are you serious? That is low." I knew she was struggling. But stealing from the estate? I stared at the screen. The blood draining from my face. The room seemed to tilt. They were talking about me. They were discussing a crime I hadn't committed as if it were a proven fact. Ethan hadn't just sued me. He was running a PR campaign to destroy my reputation within the family. I typed a reply to Julie, my fingers shaking. "This is a lie. I do not have the ring. Ethan has the ring. He took it from the safe deposit box." Julie replied instantly, "I do not know who to believe. Claire, Ethan showed Mom's financial records to Aunt Linda. He said you were in deep debt." I dropped the phone on my desk. I felt nauseous. The betrayal was physical. A sharp pain in my gut. He was using my silence against me, because I was following legal advice and not talking about the case. He was filling the void with poison. I called Dana from my car, sobbing. I couldn't help it. The stoicism I had tried to maintain shattered. "He is telling everyone I am a thief." I choked out. "My own family. They think I pawned Mom's ring." "Claire, listen to me," Dana said, her voice sharp and cutting through the panic. "This is the strategy. This is what bullies do. He wants you to react. He wants you to send an angry email, to scream at your aunt, to post a rant on social media. If you do that, he prints it out and shows it to the judge as proof that you are unhinged. But it is a lie." I screamed at the dashboard. "Then we prove it in court." Dana said, "We do not litigate this on Facebook. If you engage with the family rumors, you lose. The judge does not care what Aunt Linda thinks. The judge cares about evidence. You need to put your phone away. You need to block them if you have to. Do not give him the satisfaction of seeing you bleed. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I felt a cold, hard resolve settling over the grief. Okay, I said. I won't respond. Good, Dana said. Because we have the deposition next week, and if you go into that room emotional, they will eat you alive. The deposition was held in the conference room of Wexler and Rowe. It was a glass box on the 30th floor, overlooking the city. The view was expensive. The atmosphere was sterile. Ethan was not there. It was just me, Dana, a court reporter with a steno machine, and Ethan's lead attorney, a man named Marcus Thorne. Thorne was perfectly groomed. With silver hair and a smile that did not reach his eyes, he introduced himself politely, offered me water, and then proceeded to spend 6 hours trying to dismantle my life. He asked me about my job. He asked me about my relationship with my mother. He asked me why I hadn't visited more often in 2022. He made me recount the days leading up to her death in excruciating detail, pausing to ask if I was sure about times and dates, implying my memory was faulty. Ms. King, he said, leaning back in his chair. You have stated that you did not remove any items from the home, yet you admit you have the sapphire pendant. My mother gave it to me. I said, keeping my voice level. Do you have a deed of gift? He asked. A receipt? I have a video, I said, and a memorandum. Thorne waved a hand dismissively. We will get to the alleged memorandum later. I am asking about your mindset. Ms. King, you have considerable financial obligations. Do you not? I have bills. I said, like everyone. Thorne picked up a document from his stack. He looked at it for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Ms. King, are you familiar with the concept of financial infidelity? I frowned. I don't know what that means. It means hiding financial actions from those who have a right to know. Thorne said. He slid the paper across the table. It was face down. We have found some irregularities, he said softly, specifically regarding a line of credit opened in your name in 2019. A significant line of credit, $50,000. I stared at him. I never opened a $50,000 line of credit. The record shows it was opened, maxed out, and then payments were made sporadically from an account linked to the estate address. Thorne said. He watched me closely. Like a predator waiting for a limp, I felt the blood drain from my face. That is impossible, I said. I rent. I have a car loan. I do not have a $50,000 credit line. Thorne smiled. A small, tight expression of pity. Perhaps you forgot? Or perhaps you were hoping we wouldn't find it. If you were using estate funds to pay off a personal debt. Ms. King, that is embezzlement. I looked at Dana. She was writing furiously, her face tight. Don't answer that, Dana said. We have not seen this document. Thorne pulled the paper back. Of course. We will provide it in discovery supplementals. But the question remains. Ms. King, did you or did you not open a credit line with First National Bank in June of 2019? No, I said firmly. I did not. Thorne made a note. Interesting. The deposition ended an hour later, but the question hung in the air like smoke. As soon as I got home, I opened my laptop. My hands were trembling so badly I mistyped my password twice. I went to a credit reporting site. I paid the fee for an instant full report. I waited while the loading bar spun, my heart pounding in my ears. If there was a $50,000 debt in my name, my life was over. Bankruptcy, ruin. The report loaded. I scrolled past my student loans, past my car payment, past my 2 modest credit cards, and then I saw it. Account. First National Bank. Personal line of credit. Status. Closed/charged off. Opened. June 12, 2019. Balance at closing. $48,000. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. It was real. It existed. But I hadn't opened it. I clicked on the details. The address listed on the account was not my apartment. It was Mom's house. I looked at the payment history. The minimum payments had been made for 2 years, always on the first of the month. And then, 6 months before Mom died, the payments stopped. I sat back, the glow of the screen illuminating the dark living room. Someone had used my name, my social security number, and my mother's address to borrow $50,000, and Ethan's lawyer knew about it. The implication hit me with the force of a physical blow. Ethan wasn't just suing me for furniture. He wasn't just trying to humiliate me. He knew about this debt. If I hadn't opened it, who had? I thought about the access logs at the storage unit. I thought about the financial irregularities Thorne mentioned. I wasn't the one with the financial secret. I was the patsy. The phone rang. It was Dana. "Claire," she said, her voice urgent. "I just got the supplemental document dump from Thorne." "That credit line? The initial application signature?" "What about it?" I whispered. "It looks like yours," Dana said. "But the witness signature next to it? It is illegible. But the notary stamp belongs to a woman named Patricia Vance." "I don't know a Patricia Vance," I said. Dana paused. "I do. She used to be the office manager for Ethan's real estate firm." The silence on the line was absolute. "He did it," I said, the realization settling in like cold concrete. "He took out a loan in my name years ago, and now he is suing me to cover his tracks. We need to be very careful." "Claire," Dana said, "accusing the plaintiff of identity theft is a nuclear option. If we are wrong, you will look paranoid. If we are right, I finished. "He is not just a bad brother, he is a criminal." I looked at the credit report again. The numbers blurred. The lawsuit was no longer about a quilt or a necklace. It was a cover-up. Ethan needed to destroy my credibility so that when this debt came to light, no one would believe me when I said it wasn't mine. I closed the laptop. I walked to the window and looked out at the streetlights of Ashford Heights. I felt a strange, cold calm. The fear was gone. Fear is what you feel when you don't know what is in the dark. Now I knew. My brother was a monster, and I was going to have to kill the monster to survive. I knew I was breaking the first rule of litigation, but I could not stop myself. Dana had told me explicitly, "Do not speak to him without counsel present. Do not let him bait you." But Dana did not have a $48,000 crater in her credit history that she had not dug herself. I waited for him at the coffee shop in the lobby of his office building. It was a cavernous space of polished granite and aggressive air conditioning, filled with men in suits who walked with the brisk cadence of people who billed their time in 6-minute increments. I sat at a small round table, nursing a lukewarm latte, watching the elevators. When Ethan walked out, he was laughing. He was walking with a younger associate, a guy who looked like he was trying too hard to mimic Ethan's stride. Ethan looked unbothered. He looked like a man who slept 8 hours a night. I stood up. "Ethan?" He stopped. The laugh vanished, replaced instantly by a mask of polite concern. He murmured something to the associate, who scurried away. Then he turned to me. He did not look angry. He looked disappointed, as if I were a dog that had soiled the carpet again. "Claire," he said, "I thought we agreed that lawyers were doing the talking now." I walked up to him, ignoring the curious glances from the barista line. "I know about the credit line. Ethan, First National Bank, opened in 2019, closed right before Mom died." His expression did not flicker. Not a muscle twitched. He just looked at me with that maddeningly steady gaze, the one he used to use when I was a teenager, and he was explaining why I was wrong about politics or movies or my own feelings. "I have no idea what you are talking about," he said smoothly. "It is in my name," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it still. "But the statements went to Mom's house, and the notary was Patricia Vance, your office manager." Ethan sighed. He checked his watch, a heavy, platinum thing that probably cost more than my car. "Claire, you are under a lot of stress," he said. "I get it. The lawsuit, the grief, it makes the mind do funny things. You start looking for patterns that aren't there. You start inventing villains because it is easier than facing your own messy reality." "I did not sign those papers." I said, "You did, or you had someone do it. You used my credit to float." What? An investment? A bad deal? And now you are suing me to destroy my credibility so when this comes out, I look like a liar. He stepped closer. The air between us was cold. He lowered his voice, not to whisper, but to a pitch that felt like a hand closing around my throat. Don't spiral. Claire. The words hit me harder than a slap. Don't spiral. It was what he used to say when I cried after a breakup. It was what he said when I failed a class in college. It was his way of dismissing my entire emotional reality as a defect. It reduced my legitimate discovery of fraud to a hysterical symptom. If you are having financial trouble, he continued, his voice dripping with faux sympathy, we can discuss that in the settlement. I am not trying to ruin you. I am just trying to protect the estate. Go home. Take a nap. You look tired. He walked away. He walked toward the revolving doors and stepped out into the sunshine, leaving me standing in the granite lobby, shivering with a rage so pure it felt like it could light the building on fire. He hadn't denied it. He hadn't said I didn't do it. He had just told me I was crazy for noticing. Dana was less emotional about the revelation, but far more dangerous. This is leverage, she said the next morning, her pen tapping rhythmically on her legal pad. If he committed identity fraud. That is a felony, but we need to link the money to him. We need to see where those payments came from. She filed a motion that afternoon. It was a request for specific banking records. Not mine, but the estate's, and specifically any accounts linked to the address where the credit line statements were sent. She also requested the access logs and payment history for the storage unit, specifically asking for the source of funds used to pay the rental fees. Ethan's response was immediate and aggressive. His lawyers filed an objection, arguing that the request was overbroad, irrelevant, and a fishing expedition designed to harass the plaintiff. They are fighting too hard, Dana said, reading their objection. In civil court, if you ask for something boring, the other side usually just dumps it on you to bury you in paper. But when they fight this hard to keep a specific set of bank records out, that means there is something in there they cannot explain. They are hiding the theft. I said, he used estate money to pay the debt he took out in my name. Maybe, Dana said, or maybe it is something else. But they are building a wall around his finances, and we are going to need a battering ram. I tried to follow Ethan's advice, not to spiral, but my apartment felt like a cage. I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to stop thinking about lawsuits and credit reports. I went into the kitchen. I decided to make Mom's apple cake. It was a recipe she had only written down once, in a battered blue notebook she had kept since the 80s. I had taken the notebook from her kitchen shelf the day after the funeral. Before Ethan had locked the house, it was one of the few things I had grabbed without thinking, just an instinct to preserve the taste of home. I pulled the notebook from the shelf where I kept my cookbooks. It was stained with vanilla extract and flour, the spine held together with yellowing tape. I opened it, flipping past the lasagna and the pot roast, looking for the cake. The pages were stiff. As I turned past the section labeled desserts, something slid out. It wasn't a piece of paper. It was a heavy brass key. It clattered onto the countertop, spinning on its side before settling. I stared at it. It was an old-fashioned safe deposit box key. It had a number stamped into the metal, 104, and wrapped around the head of the key was a strip of masking tape with a single word written in Mom's handwriting. Bancroft. I picked it up. The metal was cool. Bancroft. I knew the name. Bancroft Trust Company was a small, boutique bank downtown. It wasn't the bank where Mom kept her checking account. It wasn't the bank Ethan used. It was an old, quiet institution that mostly handled generational wealth. Why did she have a key to a box there? And why was it taped inside a recipe book, hidden between the instructions for chocolate mousse and apple cake? I didn't bake the cake. I grabbed my purse. Bancroft Trust Company looked less like a bank and more like a library. The floors were marble, the ceilings were high, and the tellers spoke in hushed tones. There were no lines of people cashing paychecks. I approached the desk at the back, where a woman with silver hair and a nameplate that read, Mrs. Gable sat. "Can I help you?" she asked. I put the key on the desk. I found this in my mother's things. I said, "Her name was Margaret King. I am her daughter. Claire." Mrs. Gable picked up the key. She looked at the number, then at me. Her expression shifted from professional politeness to a guarded curiosity. "Margaret King," she repeated. One moment, she typed something into her computer. She read the screen, then looked back at me over her glasses. "Ms. King," she said, "I see that there is a box registered to Margaret King. However, the access list is quite specific. I am the executor. Well, the co-executor." I stammered, "I can show you the death certificate. That won't be necessary," she said. "We have the death certificate on file. It was provided to us last month." "Last month?" I asked. "By whom?" "By Mr. Ethan King," she said. My stomach dropped. Ethan had been here. "Did he access the box?" I asked. Mrs. Gable pursed her lips. She seemed to be weighing how much she could say. Finally, she leaned forward slightly. "Mr. King attempted to access the box," she said carefully. "He was very persistent. He brought the death certificate and his own identification. However, the rental agreement for this specific box is a joint tenancy with right of survivorship." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means," Mrs. Gable said, "that upon the death of one tenant, the contents belong solely to the surviving tenant. The box does not become part of the general estate. It is not subject to probate in the same way. Ethan King is not the surviving tenant." "Who is?" I asked, though I think I already knew. "You are," Mrs. Gable said. "Your mother added you to this box in 2018. She came in with you. Do you remember? You signed the card." The memory came back in a flash. A lunch break. Mom dragging me to run an errand. "Just sign this, Claire, in case I lose my key." I had signed it without reading it, thinking it was just a backup for her safety deposit box at her normal bank. "So Ethan couldn't get in?" I asked. Mrs. Gable allowed herself a tiny, dry smile. "He was quite unhappy about it. He claimed to have the key, but he did not have it with him. He said he would return with a court order. He has not returned yet, but I have the key." I said, "Then you may enter the vault," she said. I followed her through the heavy steel gate. My heart was pounding. Ethan knew about this box. He had tried to get in. He had failed. And he hadn't told me. Why? Mrs. Gable unlocked the box, and I slid the long metal drawer out. I carried it to a private viewing room and sat down. I opened the lid. It wasn't full of diamonds. It wasn't full of cash. It contained a single, thick manila envelope and a small velvet pouch. I opened the pouch first. Inside was a pair of pearl earrings, the ones Dad had given Mom on their 25th anniversary. Ethan had listed these in the lawsuit as missing items. He had accused me of stealing them. But they had been here, in a bank vault, safe and sound. Then I opened the envelope. It was full of documents, deeds, titles, and a ledger, a small black notebook, similar to the one I found the key in. I flipped through the ledger. It was a handwritten record of payments. June 2019. Loan proceeds, $48,000. Transferred to E.K. Bridge loan, September 2019. E.K. Missed payment, paid from savings. December 2019. E.K. insists he will pay back. Still waiting. I covered my mouth with my hand. The credit line. The fraud. It wasn't just that Ethan had stolen my identity. Mom knew. She knew. She had paid the bills to protect my credit score. She had bailed him out, but she had kept a record, transferred to E.K. She had hidden the evidence here, in a box he couldn't access, with a key hidden in a recipe he would never cook. She knew who he was. I whispered to the empty room. I brought the ledger to Dana immediately. She flipped through it, her eyes widening. "This is it," she said. "This is the smoking gun. It proves the debt was his. It proves your mother knew, and it proves he lied in his deposition when he said he knew nothing about it. We file this?" I said, "We file it tomorrow." "We do," Dana said. "But Claire, brace yourself. When we file this, the war changes. He is going to come at you with everything he has. He is going to try to destroy the validity of this evidence before a judge ever sees it. And he did. 2 days after Dana filed a motion referencing the personal property memorandum and the existence of the safety deposit box contents, Ethan's team filed a counter motion. They didn't argue the content of the memorandum. They argued its authenticity. Plaintiff alleges that the document purported to be a personal property memorandum is a forgery created by the defendant in an attempt to defraud the estate. The motion read, "The handwriting appears shaky and inconsistent with the decedent's known script. Furthermore, the defendant has a history of financial duplicity, as evidenced by the fraudulent credit line opened in her name." I read the motion in Dana's office, my hands trembling with a rage that felt hot and liquid. "He is calling me a forger," I said. "He is saying I faked Mom's handwriting, and he is using the credit line, the one he opened, as proof that you are a liar," Dana said, shaking her head. "It is a classic projection strategy. Accuse the other side of exactly what you are doing. It hurts," I said. "It hurts that he thinks I would use Mom's name like that. That is the point." Dana said, "He wants you hurt. He wants you defending your honor instead of attacking his facts. But we have a problem. The judge might pause everything to hold a hearing on the validity of the documents." The pretrial hearing was a nightmare. The courtroom was cold, and Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table, looking solemn and aggrieved. His lawyer, Thorne, stood up and painted a picture of me that was unrecognizable. He described me as a struggling, bitter woman who had raided her dead mother's home and forged documents to justify her theft. "Your Honor," Thorne said, his voice booming, "we have reason to believe that the defendant is currently in possession of assets that are being damaged or sold. We are requesting an order for a sheriff's civil standby to accompany the plaintiff to the defendant's residence to seize and secure the disputed items for preservation until the trial concludes." I gripped the edge of the table. They wanted to send the police to my house. They wanted to kick in my door and take the quilt, the necklace, the letters. Dana stood up. "Your Honor, this is an intimidation tactic. There is no evidence of dissipation of assets. My client has provided a sworn inventory." The judge looked tired. He looked back and forth between the tables. "I am not ordering a seizure today," the judge said. "However, given the serious allegations regarding the authenticity of the memorandum, I am ordering that all disputed items remain in the defendant's possession, but must not be moved, sold, or altered, and I'm granting the plaintiff's request to have a neutral third-party appraiser inventory the items in the defendant's home within 10 days. It wasn't a raid, but it was an invasion. Strangers were coming to my house to count my spoons. That night, I sat in my living room, feeling the walls closing in. The ledger was in Dana's safe, but the other items, the necklace, the quilt, the letters, were here. My phone rang. It was Marissa Holt, my best friend since college. She had been listening to me cry for weeks. "Claire," she said, "I have been thinking, if he sends people to your house, maybe you should move the small stuff? Bring the jewelry to my place. Put the letters in my safe. If they aren't there when the appraiser comes, he can't list them." I hesitated. The temptation was overwhelming. I wanted to protect these things. I wanted to keep Ethan's dirty hands off them. But then I heard Dana's voice in my head. "Everything you do is evidence. I can't," I said, my voice hollow. "Why not?" Marissa asked. "He is playing dirty. You should too." "Because if I move them," I said, "I prove him right. If I hide them, I am the thief he says I am. And if I get caught, if the judge finds out I moved assets after a court order, I lose everything. I lose the case. I lose my name. But he is going to come into your house." "Claire," Marissa cried, "it is a violation." "I know," I said. I looked at the quilt on the back of the sofa. "I know, but I have to let him. I have to let him see that I have nothing to hide. That is the only way I win." I hung up, feeling a wave of nausea. Ethan had done this. He had made me afraid of my own friends. He had made me afraid that a reasonable act of protection would be twisted into a crime. He was gaslighting me on a legal scale. The next day, Dana laid out the hard truth. "We need a forensic document examiner," she said. "We need to authenticate the memorandum and the ledger. We need an expert who can testify that the ink is from 2 years ago, that the paper matches the notebooks your mother used, and that the handwriting is 100% hers." "How much?" I asked. Dana winced. "It is not cheap. A good one the court will respect. Costs about $3,000 for the analysis and report. More if they have to testify." $3,000. I didn't have it. I had drained my savings paying Dana's retainer. "I can't afford that." "Dana," I said. "Claire," Dana said softly, "if we don't do this, it is your word against his, and he has a team of lawyers saying you are a forger. If the judge throws out that memorandum, you lose the heirlooms. You lose the proof that he knew about the debt. You lose." I looked at my hands. I thought about the credit line. I thought about the smirk on Ethan's face when he said, "Don't spiral. I will put it on a credit card." I said, "Are you sure?" Dana asked. "I am sure." I said, "It is cheaper than the alternative. The alternative is letting him write my history." I was sitting at my desk at work, staring at a spreadsheet I couldn't focus on, when an email pinged into my personal inbox. The subject line was blank. The sender was a name I didn't recognize. Owen Pike. I almost deleted it as spam. But something stopped me. I opened it. "Dear Ms. King, you don't know me. I used to do contract accounting for a firm called Apex Logistics. Your brother was a silent partner there in 2018. I saw your name on the court docket. Small towns talk. I heard about the lawsuit. I cannot testify. I signed a very aggressive NDA when I left Apex. If I speak, they will sue me into the ground. But I wanted to tell you, I recognize the pattern. He does not like paper trails he didn't create. He uses misplaced assets to balance books that don't add up. Check the preservation expenses. Check what he claims he spent to protect the estate. Do not settle. That is what he wants. He counts on the other person running out of money first. Good luck. OP. I read the email 3 times. He uses misplaced assets to balance books that don't add up. My heart started to race. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was clarity. I had been asking the wrong question for months. I had been asking, why is he doing this to me? I had been asking, why does he hate me? I had viewed this as a family tragedy, a psychological drama about a brother who couldn't share. But it wasn't about me. It was about the math. Ethan wasn't suing me because he wanted the tea set. He wasn't suing me because he was sentimental about Mom's jewelry. He was suing me because he needed a chaotic event. He needed a theft to explain why assets were missing. He needed a legal battle to justify draining estate funds for legal fees and preservation costs. He was looting the estate, and he was using me as the distraction. I sat back in my chair. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp calculation. He wasn't a grieving brother. He was a desperate man moving money around a shell game. And I was the shell. I forwarded the email to Dana. "We need to look at the preservation expenses." I typed, "Now." I wasn't spiraling anymore. I was hunting. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood, a scent that was supposed to convey dignity but only made me think of decay. It was the smell of things being preserved long past their natural life. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had turned white. Dana Mercer sat beside me, arranging her files with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Across the aisle, the Wexler and Rowe team looked like a wall of expensive wool. There were 3 of them, flanked by paralegals, creating a fortress of blue suits. In the center sat Ethan. He did not look at me. He was staring straight ahead at the judge's bench, his profile sharp and clean, the very picture of the aggrieved but responsible older brother. Judge Holloway entered. He was a man with a face like a crumpled paper bag and eyes that had seen every variety of human pettiness. He took his seat. The bailiff called the court to order, and the air in the room seemed to thin. This was it, the trial. Ethan's lead attorney, Marcus Thorne, stood for his opening statement. He moved with a predatory grace, walking to the center of the room and resting a hand on the railing of the jury box. Even though there was no jury, this was a bench trial, but Thorne performed for the audience anyway. "Your Honor," Thorne began, his voice a rich baritone that filled the space. "This case is not about greed. It is not about sibling rivalry. It is about duty. Ethan King, as the executor of the estate of Margaret King, has a legal and moral obligation to protect the assets left behind. We are here because that duty has been compromised. We are here because the defendant, in a time of confusion and perhaps financial desperation, removed estate property without authorization. He painted a picture of me that was devastatingly effective because it was subtle. He did not call me a thief. He called me confused. He called me overwhelmed. He used words like erratic and unstructured. He described Ethan as the steady hand, the successful businessman trying to bring order to chaos, while I was the emotional sister who had grabbed whatever she could carry because she felt entitled to a consolation prize. By the time Thorne sat down, even I felt like I was a liability. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand, conscious of every eye in the room. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down, the wood chair hard against my spine. Thorne approached me for cross-examination first, a strategic move to rattle me early. He held a clipboard. "Ms. King," he said, looking at me over his reading glasses, "let us discuss the items in your possession. You have admitted to taking a diamond pendant, correct?" I took a breath. "It is a sapphire pendant." I said, "And I did not take it. My mother gave it to me." Thorne smiled, a tight, patronizing expression. "Of course. You claim it was a gift, but you have no receipt? No deed of gift filed with the estate?" "It was a birthday present." I said, "We did not file deeds for birthday presents." He glanced at his notes. Item 4A, sapphire and diamond pendant, platinum setting, appraised value, $12,000. You are aware of this valuation? I shook my head. I do not know what it is worth in money. I know she wore it to my graduation. I know she told me it matched my eyes. Thorne interrupted, his voice sharp. "Please answer the question. Were you aware of the monetary value when you removed it from the premises?" I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks. He was doing it. He was stripping the memory out of the object and leaving only the price tag. "I did not remove it from the premises," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She gave it to me 3 years ago. It has been in my apartment since 2022. Thorne moved on. Relentless. "And the quilt?" Item 17. Hand-stitched. Circa 1980. Appraised at $800. Did you remove this asset from the home? "It is a blanket," I said, my voice rising slightly. "She made it. We watched movies under it. It is not an asset. It is a quilt. To the estate. Ms. King, it is an asset," Thorne said coldly. "And you took it, just like you took the letters. Item 22. A collection of correspondence. Historical value estimated at $500. They are letters she wrote to me when I was at camp." I snapped. "They are not historical. They are personal." Thorne turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the witness is hostile. She refuses to acknowledge the objective nature of the property." I looked at Ethan. He was studying his fingernails. He was letting this man turn our mother's love into a spreadsheet, and he did not even have the decency to watch. After the lunch break, Thorne played his ace. "Your Honor," he said, "the defense claims that Ms. King did not remove items from the house after the funeral. However, we have photographic evidence to the contrary." He produced a series of large, printed photographs. He handed them to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge and then to me. I looked at the top photo. It showed me standing in the driveway of Mom's house, wrestling a large cardboard box into the trunk of my car. My hair was messy. I looked exhausted. Thorne pointed a finger at me. "Ms. King, is that you in the photograph?" "Yes," I said. "And are you loading a box into your vehicle?" "Yes." "And was this photograph taken on November 2nd, 2 days after the funeral?" I looked at the photo again. I frowned. I did not remember being at the house on November 2nd. I had been back at work. I had been covering a shift for a coworker. I do not think so, I said. Thorne smirked. You do not think so? The plaintiff asserts this photo was taken on the morning of November 2nd, a day when you claimed you were not at the residence. This establishes that you had unauthorized access and removed containers of unknown content. The courtroom was silent. It looked bad. It looked like I was lying. Dana stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Your Honor, she said, may I examine the digital file of this photograph? Thorne looked annoyed. We have provided the print. I am requesting the metadata. Dana said, if Mr. Thorne is asserting a specific date, the digital file will confirm it, unless, of course, the date has been altered. The judge nodded. Mr. Thorne, provide the digital file to the defense. Thorne signaled to an assistant, who reluctantly handed over a tablet. Dana took it. She tapped the screen a few times. She swiped. Then she looked up, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a genuine smile on her face. Your Honor, Dana said, holding the tablet up, the metadata on this image clearly indicates it was taken on October 14th, 2 weeks before the decedent passed away. She turned the screen toward me. Claire, were you at the house on October 14th? I looked at the date. Yes, I said, the memory flooding back. I was helping Mom clean out the garage. She wanted to donate old coats to the shelter. That box. It is full of winter coats. Dana looked at Thorne. So, this is not a photo of theft. This is a photo of a daughter helping her dying mother run errands. Mr. Thorne, did you verify the timestamp before you accused my client of looting the estate? Thorne's face went rigid. It appears there was a clerical error regarding the file date. He muttered, It is not a clerical error, Dana said, her voice hard. It is a misrepresentation of evidence. I looked at Ethan. He wasn't looking at his nails anymore. He was glaring at his lawyer. Dana did not let up. She called the manager of Pinecrest Storage to the stand. Kevin looked terrified. He was wearing a tie that was too short, and he kept glancing at the judge as if he expected to be arrested. Dana walked him through the logs. She established that the unit was accessed on dates when I was clocked in at work. She showed my time cards. Now, Mr. Miller, Dana said, regarding the access method. Did Claire King ever possess a key card or a gate code for this unit? No. Ma'am, Kevin said. And did she ever sign into the facility? No. Ma'am. Dana picked up a piece of paper. You stated in your deposition that on November 12th, a man identifying himself as the account holder's assistant accessed the unit. Is that correct? Yes, Kevin said. Did he use a key? No. He had the code. The master code. Dana turned to Ethan. The code that belonged to Mr. King. She turned back to Kevin. And what did this individual have with him? A suitcase? Kevin said. A large rolling suitcase. And when he left? It looked heavy. Kevin said. He struggled to get it over the threshold. Dana let the silence hang in the room. So, Dana said, we have a unit accessed by someone with Mr. King's code, removing heavy items in a suitcase, on a date when Ms. King was at work, and yet Mr. King is suing Ms. King for the missing contents of that unit. She sat down. Ethan's jaw was so tight I could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. He knew. He knew we were peeling back the layers. The next day, we brought out the big gun. Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation to Ethan's lawyer, was a forensic document examiner. He was a small, fastidious man who spoke in a monotone that made every word sound like a fact of nature. Dana handed him the personal property memorandum. Dr. Thorne, have you examined this document? I have, the doctor said. And what were your findings regarding the handwriting? He adjusted his glasses. I compared the script to 30 known samples of Margaret King's handwriting dating from 2015 to 2024. The slant, the pressure points, and the specific formation of the letters G and Y are a 100% match. There is no evidence of tremors or hesitation marks that would indicate forgery or tracing. And the ink? Dana asked. Ballpoint, black, standard formulation. We performed a chemical age analysis. The solvent evaporation rates are consistent with the document having been written approximately 18 to 24 months ago. This aligns with the date on the page. So, Dana said, looking at Ethan's table, it was not written last week by my client? Impossible. Doctor, Thorne said, the ink would still be outgassing. This ink is dry. And the paper? Standard bond paper, consistent with a pad found in the decedent's home office. We matched the tear patterns on the top edge to the remaining stub in the notebook. Thank you. Doctor. Dana turned to the judge. Your Honor, the plaintiff has alleged that this document is a forgery created by a desperate woman. Science says otherwise. This is Margaret King's voice. This is her intent. And this document explicitly gifts the contested items to Claire King. Thorne tried to cross-examine, but it was useless. You can't argue with ink chemistry. He sat down after 2 questions, looking defeated. With the forgery argument dead, Thorne pivoted to the only thing he had left, my character. He called me back to the stand. He didn't ask about the items this time. He asked about money. Ms. King, he said, his voice dropping to a sympathetic register that made my skin crawl. Let us speak frankly. You live alone. You work in logistics. Your salary is modest. It covers my needs, I said. Does it? Thorne asked. He picked up a sheet of paper. We have records indicating you have applied for credit increases 3 times in the last 5 years. You drive a car with over 100,000 miles on it. You rent. I do not see how this is relevant. I said, it goes to motive. Thorne said, you felt you were owed something, didn't you? You watched your brother succeed. You watched him build wealth, and you felt left behind. Isn't it true that you felt entitled to these items not because of sentiment, but because they were the only inheritance you could grab? I stared at him. I thought about the credit line Ethan had opened in my name, the $48,000 he had stolen from my future. I am not rich. I said clearly, I drive a used car. I rent my home, but I have never asked my brother for a dime. I have been independent since the day I graduated college. I did not take those things because I wanted to sell them. I took them because they smell like her. Thorne leaned in. And yet, you have a history of debt, don't you? A large debt. I looked at Dana. She gave a microscopic nod. I have a debt on my record, I said, my voice turning to ice. A debt that was opened fraudulently, a debt that was paid for with estate funds. But we will get to that. Thorne pulled back, realizing he had stepped on a landmine. He quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. I hadn't crumbled. I hadn't cried. I had stood my ground. Ethan took the stand on the 3rd day. He looked impeccable. He spoke about his love for our mother, his desire to honor her wishes. He explained that the lawsuit was painful for him, a last resort. Thorne asked him about the memorandum. Mr. King, were you aware of this list? No, Ethan said, shaking his head sadly. Mother never mentioned it. If she had, we wouldn't be here. I just want to ensure it is valid. Thorne nodded. And the items in the safety deposit box? You were unaware of those as well? Completely unaware, Ethan said. I assumed the box was empty. Dana stood up for cross-examination. She walked toward him slowly. She did not look aggressive. She looked curious. Mr. King, she said, you stated you never saw the memorandum. You stated you never saw the contents of the safety deposit box. That is correct, Ethan said. Then can you explain something to me? Dana asked. She picked up a transcript of Ethan's deposition from months ago. In your deposition, on page 42, you referred to the sapphire pendant as the bluebird pendant. Do you recall that? Ethan blinked. I might have. It is just a name. Dana flipped a page, and in an email to your attorneys, dated January 10th, you instructed them to ensure the return of the sunken garden brooch. Ethan shifted in his chair. Yes, that is what it looks like. Dana held up the memorandum, the one the forensic expert had just authenticated. Mr. King, Nowhere in any appraisal or insurance document are these names used. Bluebird and sunken garden are not industry terms. However, she opened the memorandum. Here, in your mother's handwriting. She lists Item 4, the Bluebird pendant, and Item 9, the sunken garden brooch. Dana looked up, her eyes locking onto Ethan's. These were private nicknames, names she only used in this specific document. If you never saw this list, Mr. King, and you never saw the items in the box, how did you know to call them by those names? The silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could hear the hum of the HVAC system. Ethan opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at Thorne, but Thorne was staring at the table. I must have... Ethan stammered. She must have mentioned them to me. Years ago. Dana didn't let go. She mentioned them? And you remembered the exact phrasing? Sunken garden? Not flower brooch? Not emerald pin? Ethan's face flushed. A dull red anger creeping up his neck. I don't recall exactly. It was a long time ago. Dana turned to the judge. Your Honor, please let the record reflect that the witness used specific nomenclature found only in the document he claims he never saw. This suggests he did. In fact, see the memorandum, or the contents of the box, long before this trial began. Objection, Thorne shouted. Standing up. Speculation. Sustained, the judge said, but he was writing something down in his notebook. He looked at Ethan with a new expression. It wasn't belief. It was skepticism. I was watching Ethan crumble, watching the facade crack. When the door at the back of the courtroom opened, it was a heavy door, and it made a dull thud as it closed. I turned around. Sitting in the back row, alone, was a man in a beige trench coat. He had graying hair and glasses. He held a briefcase on his lap. It was Owen Pike. I had never seen him in person, only his LinkedIn photo. But I knew it was him. The accountant, the man who knew the pattern. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Ethan. I turned back to the front. Ethan had seen him too. The color drained from Ethan's face. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was instant. He went pale. The kind of gray-white you see on people who are about to faint. His eyes widened, fixing on the man in the back row. Ethan stopped listening to Dana's question. He stopped looking at the judge. He was staring at the ghost of his own financial history. Dana noticed the shift. She paused. She looked back at Owen, then back at Ethan. She didn't know who he was, but she knew he mattered. No further questions. Dana said softly. Ethan stood up to leave the witness stand. His legs looked unsteady. He stumbled slightly on the step. Catching himself on the railing, the confident, polished executive was gone. In his place was a man who realized the walls were not just closing in, they were made of glass, and someone was standing outside with a hammer. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. He looked at the mountain of conflicting evidence. The photos with the wrong dates, the storage logs with the wrong names, the memorandum with the right ink, and the witness who knew too much about nicknames. This proceeding has become complicated. The judge said, there are significant discrepancies regarding the inventory of the estate. We have allegations of missing items from both sides. We have disputed values. We have disputed possession. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I am not issuing a ruling on ownership today, he continued. Instead, I am ordering a comprehensive, court-supervised inventory. Thorne started to object. Your Honor, that is unnecessary. It is entirely necessary. Mr. Thorne, the judge snapped, I am appointing a civil standby officer to compile a definitive list of all items in question. This list will include their location, their provenance, and any documentation attached to them. This officer will visit the defendant's home. They will visit the plaintiff's home. They will visit the storage unit. The judge leaned forward. Every single item will be cataloged. Every piece of paper will be reviewed. And this list will be read into the record at our next hearing in 48 hours. If there are contradictions, they will be exposed in open court. Ethan looked sick. He didn't want a list. He wanted a settlement. He wanted me to give up. A list meant details. A list meant a paper trail. We adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom. Owen Pike was already gone. He had vanished as quietly as he had arrived. A silent warning shot. Ethan was arguing with Thorne in the hallway. I heard Thorne say, "You didn't tell me about the names. Ethan, you didn't tell me you knew." I walked past them. I didn't stop. I didn't look down. I walked out into the sunlight of the courthouse plaza. The air tasted sweet. For the first time in 6 months, I didn't feel like the victim. Ethan had thought he was fighting his little sister. He thought he was fighting a woman who cried at funerals and kept old letters. But he wasn't fighting me anymore. He was fighting the inventory. He was fighting the receipts. He was fighting the ink chemistry and the metadata and the ledgers. He was fighting the truth. And as I walked toward my car, I realized something that made me smile for the first time in a long time. The truth is undefeated. The inventory process was not the dramatic raid I had feared. It was something worse. It was bureaucratic. The court appointed a civil standby officer named Mr. Henderson. He was a man who looked like he had spent his entire life counting things that did not belong to him. He carried a clipboard and a digital tablet, and he moved through my apartment with a detachment that made me feel like a ghost in my own home. Dana stood by the door, watching him like a hawk. I sat on the sofa, my hands folded, trying to stop shaking. "Item number 4A, Henderson said, his voice flat. "Sapphire and diamond pendant." I pointed to the coffee table where I had laid it out on a velvet cloth. "Here," I said. He picked it up. He examined it under a small light. He took a photo. He marked a checkbox on his tablet. "Item number 17B, he said. "Patchwork quilt, blue and white star pattern. It is on the chair." I said. He photographed it. He checked the box. This went on for an hour. It was invasive, but it was factual. I had the items. I was not hiding them. Then we got to page 3 of Ethan's claim list. Item number 32. Henderson read, "Set of 6 sterling silver candlesticks. Gorham pattern. Circa 1950. I looked at him. "I do not have those." I said. Henderson looked over his glasses. "The plaintiff asserts they were removed from the residence on November 2nd. He has provided a detailed description. 3 distinct scratches on the base of one stick, a dent in the rim of another." I felt a cold prickle of unease. I had never seen those candlesticks. Not in my apartment, not in Mom's house. I never took them. I said, "I do not think Mom even owned them." Henderson made a note. Item not present. Defendant denies possession. He moved to the next one. Item number 35, Dresden porcelain shepherdess figurine, roughly 8 inches tall, blue skirt. I shook my head. "No, I have never seen that." Henderson sighed. He tapped the screen. The plaintiff's description is very specific. Ms. King. He notes a chip on the shepherdess's left hand. I sat back, my mind racing. Ethan wasn't just listing things I had taken. He was listing things that I wasn't sure existed, or perhaps things he had sold years ago. But his descriptions were so precise, the scratches, the chips, the dents, that it made his claims sound irrefutable. It sounded like the memory of a man who cherished these objects. If I said I didn't have them, and he had such a vivid description, I looked like a liar who had sold them on the black market. He is setting me up. I whispered to Dana, "He is padding the list with ghosts. Let him." Dana whispered back, "If we find out he has them, or if we find out they were sold 10 years ago, his specific descriptions become proof of his perjury." 2 days later, the inventory moved to neutral ground, Pinecrest Storage. This was the battleground. This was where Ethan claimed I had looted the estate. The facility was cold, a labyrinth of corrugated metal and concrete that smelled of dust and damp cardboard. Mr. Henderson was there, Dana was there, and Ethan's lawyer, Thorne, was there. Ethan, notably, was absent. He had sent his proxy to watch the humiliation. Henderson cut the lock on Unit 412. He rolled up the metal door. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the hallway. We all stepped forward. The unit was large, 10 feet by 10 feet. And it was weirdly empty. There were boxes, yes, but they were stacked in a neat pyramid in the center of the room. The shelves along the walls were bare. Thorne stepped forward, looking smug. "As you can see," he said, "the unit has been depleted. Mr. King asserts that this unit was full to the ceiling at the time of death." Henderson stepped inside. He clicked his flashlight on. He shined it on the concrete floor. I watched the beam of light sweep across the gray surface, and then it stopped. There, on the floor near the back wall, was a distinct rectangular outline in the dust, and next to it, another, and another. The floor was covered in a fine layer of grime, except for these clean, sharp rectangles where boxes had sat for a long time and had been recently moved. But the boxes currently in the room were stacked in the center, nowhere near the dust outlines. Dana saw it too. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice sharp, "please note the floor." Henderson looked down. He crouched. He ran a gloved finger along the edge of a dust outline. Items were moved. Henderson stated, "Recently, the dust has not settled over these void spaces." Thorne shifted his weight. "Obvious rearrangement during the initial inventory." He said quickly, "Rearrangement?" Dana asked. "Or removal? The dust patterns suggest shelving units were here. There are no shelving units now. Where did they go?" She pointed to the stack in the center. "And look at those boxes. They are labeled in Ethan's handwriting. Taxes. Old photos. They are taped shut with fresh packing tape. The adhesive is still shiny." Henderson approached the stack. He noted the tape. He noted the dust outlines. "We are going to inventory the contents of these specific boxes." Henderson said. He opened the first box. It was full of old newspapers, not documents, just newspapers from the 90s. He opened the second. Old curtains, moth-eaten. He opened the third. It was a jumble of wires and electronics. Old remotes, cables, and a few outdated cell phones. I stepped closer. I recognized the tangle of tech. Mom had a drawer in the kitchen she called the graveyard. She never threw away a phone. "Wait," I said. I reached into the box. Henderson started to object, but I ignored him. My hand closed around a small, silver flip phone. It was a Motorola. Mom had used it for years before she finally upgraded to a smartphone. I turned it over. There was a piece of masking tape on the back. Spare. I pressed the power button. Nothing. It was dead. "May I?" I asked Henderson. "I just want to see if it works." Henderson nodded. "Item number. Let us call it Miscellaneous Electronics Batch 4. Go ahead." I didn't have a charger, but I knew Mom. She kept chargers with the phones. I dug through the tangle of wires in the box until I found the adapter. There was an outlet in the hallway. I plugged it in. The little screen lit up. "Motorola?" I waited. The battery icon flashed. It had a tiny bit of juice left, or maybe the capacitor was just holding on. I opened the menu. I went to the voice recorder. Mom used to record reminders to herself, grocery lists, ideas for the garden. There was one recording, dated 6 months before she died. I pressed play. The sound was tinny, scratching through the small speaker, but it was her. It was her voice, clear and strong, without the rasp that sickness had added at the end. "Claire," the voice said, "I am recording this on the old phone because I do not trust the cloud. I do not trust who has my passwords." I froze. Thorne took a step closer. Dana held up a hand to stop him. "I know Ethan is asking about the money." Mom's voice continued. "I know he is angry about the help I gave you. He thinks it is unfair. But he forgets what I gave him. He forgets the bailouts." There was a pause, a sound of her taking a breath. "If he ever makes this ugly, Claire, if he ever tries to take what is yours, look in the blue binder. The one I keep the vet records in. I hid the real ledger there. Not the one in the safe deposit box. The real one. It shows where the trust money went." The recording ended. The silence in the hallway was absolute. Thorne looked like he had swallowed a lemon. Dana looked like she had just been handed a loaded weapon. I unplugged the phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. "Mr. Henderson," Dana said, her voice deadly calm. "Please tag this phone as evidence item 1, and we will be requiring a supervised search for a blue binder. I held it together until I got to my car. Dana offered to drive me, but I shook my head. I needed to be alone. I drove 3 blocks to a gas station, parked in the back near the air pump, and turned off the engine. Then I screamed. It was a guttural, ugly sound that tore at my throat. I screamed until my chest ached. Then I cried. I cried because she knew. She knew he would do this. She knew her son was capable of consuming her daughter. She had lived with that knowledge, that fear, in her final months. She had hidden crumbs for me to follow because she couldn't trust him to protect me. It broke me. The realization that our family had been a war zone long before the lawsuit. We were just fighting in the ruins now. My phone buzzed. It was Dana. Do not post anything. Do not call him. Go home. Drink water. We are winning. I wiped my face. I looked at my eyes in the rearview mirror. They were red and puffy. I am not winning. I said to the empty car, I am just surviving. The next day, Dana sat me down in her office. She looked concerned. Claire, she said, you are doing well on the facts. But yesterday, at the storage unit, you were shaking. You looked like you were about to shatter. I found a voice from the grave. Dana, I said, it was a lot. I know, she said. But Thorne saw it too. And he will use it. If you cry on the stand, if you look hysterical, he will pivot back to the unstable sister narrative. He will say you are hallucinating. He will say you are too emotional to be a credible witness. So what do I do? I asked. Stop feeling? No, Dana said. You process it. I want you to see someone, a therapist, just for a few sessions, not to fix your grief, but to give you tools. You need to learn how to put the emotion in a box, so you can be a witness first and a daughter second. I resisted at first. I didn't have the money, and I didn't have the time. But I went. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Evans. She didn't ask me about my childhood. She asked me about the courtroom. When you feel the panic, she said, describe the room to yourself, the color of the wood, the sound of the fan. Ground yourself in the physical reality of the moment. Do not go into the story in your head. Stay in the room. It sounded simple. It wasn't. But I practiced. I practiced breathing. I practiced describing the texture of my steering wheel when I felt the rage boiling up. I practiced being a camera, recording the world without judging it. A week before the final hearing, a courier arrived at Dana's office. He carried a thick envelope from Wexler and Rowe. It was a settlement offer. Dana called me in to read it. It is generous, Dana said, her face unreadable. Financially, it is everything we could ask for. I read the terms. 1. Plaintiff agrees to drop all claims of theft and conversion. 2. Plaintiff agrees to pay defendant's legal fees, up to $40,000. 3. Defendant retains possession of all disputed items currently in her home. 4. Defendant receives a cash payout of $20,000 from the estate. I looked up. He is paying me? He is giving up? Read the next page. Dana said. I turned the page. Condition of settlement. Defendant agrees to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding all financial matters of the estate and the family trust. Defendant agrees to sign a stipulated statement that the personal property memorandum was ambiguous and non-binding, and that the retention of items is a gift from the plaintiff, rather than a legal right. Defendant agrees to destroy all copies of the alleged audio recording found on the Motorola device. I stared at the paper. He wants me to say he gave them to me. I said, he wants to be the benevolent brother. He wants to erase Mom's list, and he wants the recording gone. Dana said, and the NDA means you can never talk about the credit line fraud. You can never talk about the missing trust money. If you sign this, you get the stuff, you get the money, and you walk away debt-free. But he gets to keep his reputation. He gets to keep doing whatever he is doing with the rest of the estate. I looked at the number, $20,000. It was a lot of money. It would fix my car. It would pay off the forensic expert. It would give me peace. I closed my eyes. I imagined signing it. I imagined the relief of it being over. But then I heard Mom's voice on the recording. If he ever tries to take what is yours, She hadn't just meant the necklace. She meant my truth. She meant my reality. If I signed this, I was agreeing that I was crazy. I was agreeing that the memorandum was fake or wrong. I was agreeing that Ethan was the good guy who saved me. I would be living in a story he wrote. I opened my eyes. No, I said. Dana exhaled. She looked relieved. Are you sure? It is a guaranteed win. Claire, trial is a gamble. It is not a win, I said. It is a bribe. He is buying my silence because he is terrified of what is in that blue binder. He is terrified of the recording. I pushed the paper back across the desk. Tell him no, I said. Tell him I don't want his money. I want the inventory read into the record. I want the judge to hear it. Dana smiled. She picked up her pen. I was hoping you would say that. The night before the final hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room, watching the streetlights cast shadows on the floor. I wondered if I was an idiot. I had turned down safety for a principal. Then the doorbell rang. It was 10 o'clock at night. I froze. Ethan? I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The porch was empty. I opened the door. The chain still on. There was no one there. But on the doormat, there was a plain manila folder. No label, no stamp. I undid the chain and grabbed it. Looking out into the darkness, I saw taillights fading at the end of the block. A sedan. Generic. I locked the door and took the folder to the kitchen. I opened it. It was a stack of photocopies. Invoices. Bank statements. Emails. The top document was an invoice from a company called Premier Climate Storage. The bill was for preservation of estate assets. The amount was $4,000 a month. I looked at the address of the storage facility. I looked it up on my phone. It wasn't a storage unit. It was a luxury wine cellar and concierge service in the city. I flipped the page. An invoice for security upgrades for asset protection. $12,000. The service address was Ethan's condo downtown. I flipped again. A credit card statement for the estate account. Charges for travel, estate business. The charges were for a resort in Cabo San Lucas. The note at the bottom of the page was handwritten in block letters. Preservation costs? I felt a surge of adrenaline. These documents proved embezzlement. He was using the lawsuit and the risk of theft as a cover to drain the estate's cash to pay for his lifestyle. He was charging his vacation to the estate under the guise of legal work. He was charging his home security system to the estate by claiming he was protecting assets. Someone had leaked this. I thought of the nervous assistant at Pinecrest Storage. I thought of Owen Pike. Or maybe it was someone inside Wexler and Rowe who had seen enough. I called Dana. I have it. I said, my voice shaking. I have the proof. Someone left it on my doorstep. Don't touch it more than you have to, Dana said instantly. Put it in a plastic bag. We need to authenticate it. But Claire, if this is real, this is not just a civil case anymore. This is criminal fraud. He is paying for his wine cellar with Mom's money. I said, he labeled it storage. Bring it in the morning. Dana said, and Claire, lock your door. I didn't sleep. I sat with the folder, staring at the numbers. $4,000 a month for wine storage. While he sued me for an $800 quilt. The scale of the hypocrisy was breathtaking. He wasn't just greedy. He was pathological. He had convinced himself that he deserved this money, that he was the rightful king of the family, and that I was a peasant stealing crumbs. The fear was gone now, truly gone. In its place was a cold, hard determination. I dressed in the morning with the care of a soldier putting on armor. I wore the sapphire pendant, the one he tried to take. I wore a suit that was sharp and professional. I drove to the courthouse. Dana met me at the steps. She looked at the folder I handed her. She flipped through it. We can't introduce this today without authentication, she warned, but we can use it to impeach him if he takes the stand. We can ask him specific questions about these vendors. If he lies, and we have this, he is done. We walked into the courtroom. Ethan was already there. He looked tired. The polish was wearing thin. His suit looked slightly rumpled, as if he hadn't gone home. He looked at me. For a second, I saw it. Fear. He knew he had lost control. He knew the settlement offer had been rejected. He knew the inventory was coming, but he didn't know about the folder in Dana's bag. Judge Holloway entered. All rise. The judge sat. He looked at the civil officer. Mr. Henderson, Mr. Henderson, the judge said. Have you compiled the official inventory of the disputed property? Yes, Your Honor, Henderson said. He stood up, holding a thick document. Please approach and read the findings into the record, the judge said. This was the moment Ethan had pushed for. He had demanded this inventory. He had wanted the world to see what I had taken. Henderson cleared his throat. Item 1, he began. I looked at Ethan. He wasn't looking at Henderson. He was looking at me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. I didn't blink. I let him see the anger. I let him see the mother he thought he had buried. The reading began, and with every item, the trapdoor under Ethan's feet opened a little wider. The courtroom was fuller than it had been all week. It seemed that word had spread through Ashford Heights that the King family drama was reaching its final act. The gallery was a sea of hushed whispers and curious faces. I saw neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. I saw a few reporters from the local paper, their pens poised over notepads, hungry for a story about the fall of a prominent local businessman. And I saw Aunt Linda, sitting in the back row, looking pale and clutching her purse as if she expected someone to snatch it. Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, but the posture was wrong. He was rigid, his neck muscles were tight cords, and he kept touching the knot of his tie. He looked like a man who was trying to hold a cracking dam together with his bare hands. I sat with Dana. I felt a strange, cold calm. The fear that had defined the last 6 months was gone, replaced by the sterile clarity of the moment. We were not brother and sister anymore. We were plaintiff and defendant. Judge Holloway entered, his black robe billowing. He took his seat and surveyed the room with a gaze that stripped away the pretense. He looked tired of us. He looked tired of family squabbles masking greed. The court is in session. The judge said, We are here to receive the report of the civil standby officer regarding the inventory of the estate property. Mr. Henderson, please proceed. Mr. Henderson stood up. He adjusted his glasses and walked to the podium. He held a thick binder. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the overhead lights. I will read the itemized list of disputed property, Henderson said, his voice monotone and projected to the back of the room. Each item has been verified for location and provenance. He began. Item 1. Sapphire and diamond pendant. Location? Defendant's residence. Provenance? Gifted to defendant in 2022. Authenticated by photographic evidence and personal property memorandum. Ethan didn't move. Item 2. Handmade patchwork quilt. Location? Defendant's residence. Provenance? Produced by the decedent. Authenticated by personal property memorandum. Item 3. Collection of correspondence, 1990 to 2005. Location? Defendant's residence. Provenance? Addressed to defendant. The list went on. It was mundane at first. Spoons, books, a ceramic vase. It was a laundry list of a life, the small detritus that makes up a home. The reporters looked bored. Aunt Linda shifted in her seat. But then, Henderson turned the page. Item 24. Henderson read, Box of antique linens. Location? Missing from Pinecrest Storage Unit 412. Note: Plaintiff asserted these items were removed by defendant. However, facility access logs indicate removal on November 12th by access code 884. Henderson paused. He looked up over his glasses. Access code 884 is registered to Patricia Vance, office manager for King Real Estate Group. A ripple went through the courtroom. A low murmur of voices. Ethan stiffened. His lawyer, Marcus Thorne, scribbled something furiously on a legal pad. Patricia Vance worked for Ethan. The court just heard that Ethan's employee had removed the items Ethan was suing me for stealing. Henderson continued, ignoring the noise. Item 25. Sterling Silver Tea Service. Location: missing from Pinecrest Storage Unit 412. Removal indicated on November 12th by access code 884. Item 26. First edition novels. Location: missing from Pinecrest Storage Unit 412. Removal indicated on November 12th by access code 884. The rhythm was relentless. Access code 884. Access code 884. Every repetition was a hammer blow to Ethan's narrative. He had sworn under oath that the unit was untouched. He had sworn I was the only one with a motive to take things. And now, the court's own officer was reading a timeline of systematic removal by Ethan's own staff. Ethan stared straight ahead. He was not looking at the judge. He was not looking at me. He was staring at a spot on the wall, his face a mask of frozen denial. Then Henderson reached the preservation box. Item 40, labeled Preservation Box A, submitted by plaintiff as evidence of estate organization. Location: surrendered to civil officer by plaintiff's counsel on February 1st. Henderson opened the box on the podium. He pulled out a stack of papers. Contents include 3 bank envelopes and 1 ledger-style notebook. Henderson read, "Envelopes are labeled Estate Petty Cash." He opened the first envelope. Contents of envelope 1. Receipts for Premier Climate Storage. Account holder: Ethan King. Service address: The Wine Vault. Downtown District. Monthly cost: $4,000. Paid via estate trust account. The oxygen seemed to vanish from the room. The reporter started writing fast. Henderson picked up the next document. Contents of envelope 2. Invoice for Perimeter Security System. Service address: 14 Skyline Drive. Unit 52. That is Ethan's condo. I whispered to Dana. Paid via estate trust account. Henderson finished. Memo line reads, Asset Protection. Dana stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Your Honor," she said, her voice cutting through the rising murmur. "I must ask for a pause." The judge looked at her. "On what grounds?" "Ms. Mercer?" Dana pointed to the box. "Foundational questions." "Your Honor, we need to confirm the chain of custody for that box. The plaintiff submitted it?" Mr. Henderson looked at his notes. "Affirmative. This box was provided by Mr. Thorne's office as part of the mandatory disclosure of estate records held by the plaintiff. It was labeled as financial records regarding the preservation of assets." Dana turned to look at Ethan. "So the plaintiff submitted evidence," she said clearly. "That proves he has been using estate funds to pay for his personal wine storage and his personal home security?" "Objection!" Thorne shouted, jumping to his feet. He looked panicked. His face was flushed red. "This is outside the scope of the inventory. These are administrative documents. They are not relevant to the ownership of the heirlooms." "Overruled," Judge Holloway snapped. His voice was like a whip crack. "Mr. Thorne, you requested this inventory. You insisted that every item and every document be cataloged to prove your client's diligence. If your client submitted documents showing he is looting the estate to pay for wine storage, that is entirely relevant to his credibility as a fiduciary." The judge leaned forward, his eyes boring into Ethan. "Mr. Henderson, continue. Read the rest of the box." Ethan looked like he wanted to vomit. He had played a shell game, hiding his theft in plain sight, burying the invoices in boxes he thought no one would check, or perhaps boxes he had simply handed off to assistants without reading. He had been so arrogant, so sure of his own power, that he had handed the murder weapon to the police. Henderson picked up the ledger. Item 41. Handwritten ledger found in Preservation Box A. Entries correspond to dates in 2019. He opened it. Entry dated June 12, 2019. Loan proceeds, $48,000. Note: transfer to E. K. Personal. Entry dated September 1st, 2019. Payment missed. Note: E. K. Says next month. Entry dated December 1st, 2019. Payment missed. Note: I will pay it myself to save her credit. Henderson stopped reading. He looked at the judge. This appears to be a record of debt repayment. Henderson said. "It matches the handwriting of the decedent." The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped writing. They were just watching. Dana stood up again. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense moves to separate these financial documents for immediate preservation. We also move to dismiss the plaintiff's claims of theft against my client. Given that the plaintiff has just been proven to be in possession of the items he claimed were missing, and is visibly implicated in financial malfeasance by his own evidence." Thorne tried to speak, but he had nothing. He was a lawyer on a sinking ship. "Your Honor," he stammered, We reserve the right to explain these discrepancies. There is nothing to explain," the judge said coldly. "The documents speak for themselves." But Ethan wasn't done. He stood up. "It is a mistake," he said. His voice was cracked, high-pitched. "That ledger. It is not. I didn't know it was there. It is a misunderstanding. Sit down. Mr. King," the judge ordered. "It is a formatting error." Ethan insisted, desperate to regain control of the narrative. "Those invoices, they are coded wrong. It is standard accounting for mixed-use assets." The judge looked at Dana. "Ms. Mercer?" Dana nodded to the back of the room. "We have a witness who can speak to the standard accounting practices of Mr. King's former business dealings. Mr. Owen Pike." Ethan spun around. Owen Pike stood up in the back row. He didn't look like an avenging angel. He looked like an accountant in a beige coat. He walked to the railing. "I swear the witness," the judge said. Owen raised his right hand. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" "I do," Owen said. Dana didn't bring him to the stand. She asked him from the floor. "Mr. Pike," Dana said, "you previously managed accounts for Apex Logistics, where Mr. King was a partner?" "I did," Owen said. "Are you familiar with the invoice coding used by Mr. King for personal expenses?" "I am," Owen said. His voice was dry, clinical. Dana held up the copy of the wine storage invoice. "Is this format consistent with legitimate business expenses?" "No," Owen said. "In my experience, Mr. King frequently utilized a coding system where personal luxury expenses were labeled as storage or preservation to bypass audit triggers. We flagged it multiple times in 2018. It is a specific pattern designed to conceal asset diversion." "Thank you," Dana said. It took 30 seconds, but in 30 seconds, Owen Pike stripped away the last shred of Ethan's defense. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. It was a lifestyle. Ethan sank back into his chair. He put his head in his hands. The slick, untouchable brother was gone. All that was left was a thief in a suit. Judge Holloway didn't wait. He didn't ask for closing arguments. He had seen enough. He picked up his gavel. He didn't bang it. He just held it, testing the weight. "I am ready to rule on the matter of the personal property," the judge said. He looked at me. "Claire King, the court finds that you are the rightful owner of all items currently in your possession, as listed in the personal property memorandum. The plaintiff's request for replevin is denied with prejudice. You may keep the pendant, the quilt, the letters, and all other disputed heirlooms." I let out a breath I had been holding for 6 months. "Furthermore," the judge continued, his voice hardening, "regarding the items missing from the storage unit, the court finds that the plaintiff, Ethan King, through his agents, removed these items. The claim that the defendant stole them is found to be baseless and brought in bad faith." He turned his gaze to Ethan. "Mr. King, the documents revealed in this inventory are deeply disturbing. They suggest a systemic breach of fiduciary duty and potential criminal fraud. I am ordering that all financial records of the estate be seized immediately by the court. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for a full criminal investigation into the management of the Margaret King estate." Ethan flinched as if he had been slapped. Criminal investigation. Those were the words that ended careers. Those were the words that ended lives. The judge looked back at Mr. Henderson. "Is there anything else on the inventory list?" Henderson hesitated. He looked into the box. "There is one final item." "Your Honor?" Henderson said. "It was at the very bottom of the preservation box. It is a sealed envelope." He held it up. "It is addressed to the defendant, Henderson said. "The handwriting appears to match the decedent. Read the address." The judge said. Henderson squinted at the writing. It says, "For Claire, only if he takes you to court." The room went dead silent. Ethan looked up. His face was gray. He knew the handwriting. "Open it," the judge said. Henderson shook his head. "It is addressed to the defendant." "Your Honor." "I believe she should open it." The judge nodded. "Ms. King, please approach." I stood up. My legs felt heavy. I walked to the podium. Henderson handed me the envelope. It was old. The paper was slightly yellowed. I recognized the pen. Mom always used a specific felt-tip pen. I turned it over. The seal was unbroken. She had sealed this years ago, and Ethan had carried it around in his box of preservation documents, never knowing it was there. A time bomb he had strapped to his own chest. "Open it, Ms. King," the judge said gently. "Read it into the record." My hands shook. I tore the paper. I pulled out a single sheet of stationery. I took a deep breath. I looked at the words. "My dearest Claire." I had to stop. My throat closed up. "Take your time," the judge said. I swallowed hard and began again. "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, then my worst fear has come true. It means Ethan did not keep his promise. It means he came after you." I heard a gasp from the gallery. "Aunt Linda, I have loved you both." I read, "But I have known for a long time that Ethan is broken in a way I could not fix. He loves things more than people. He measures his worth in what he can take." I looked at Ethan. He was staring at me, his eyes wide, terrified. He was hearing his mother's final judgment from the grave. "I paid the debt he took out in your name because I did not want you to start your life with his mistakes hanging over you." I read, "I hid the ledger because I did not want to send my son to prison. I tried to protect you from his greed, and I tried to protect him from his own consequences. But if he has dragged you into a courtroom, if he has tried to take the little I gave you, then he has broken the pact. He has chosen money over family. So here's the truth. The house on Skyline Drive, his condo, was bought with the insurance money from your father's policy. He told me it was a loan. He never paid it back. The papers are in the blue binder. The business investment in Apex Logistics was funded by the family trust. He told me it was for your education fund. He took it all. I am sorry. Claire, I am sorry I was not strong enough to stop him while I was alive. But I am giving you the weapon now. You can use it to destroy him, or you can use it to free yourself. Do what you must, but know that you were never the thief. You were the treasure. Love, Mom." I lowered the paper. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I looked at Ethan. He wasn't the arrogant businessman anymore. He wasn't the powerful older brother. He was a small, exposed man sitting in a pile of his own lies. He looked at me, and his eyes were pleading. He was begging me not to turn the page. He was begging me not to hand the letter to the judge. The letter detailed the specific theft of the insurance money. It detailed the theft of my education fund. If I entered this into the record, he wouldn't just lose the lawsuit. He would lose everything. He would go to prison for a long time. I looked at the judge. He was waiting. "Ms. King," the judge asked, "do you wish to submit that letter as evidence?" I looked at the paper in my hand. "You can use it to destroy him. It was the ultimate revenge. I could burn his life to the ground. I could watch him be handcuffed. I could watch him lose the condo, the firm, the reputation. But then I looked at the last line. You were the treasure. Mom hadn't written this so I could become him. She hadn't written this so I could spend the rest of my life in courtrooms, fighting a war over money and spite. She had written it so I would know I was right. I had the truth. Everyone in the room knew it. The reporters knew it. The judge knew it. Ethan knew it. I didn't need to burn him down. He had already poured the gasoline on himself. I just had to walk away before the fire caught me too. I looked at Ethan one last time. I saw the terror in his face, and I realized I didn't hate him anymore. I pitied him. He had spent his whole life building a fortress out of other people's money, and now he was going to die inside it alone. I folded the letter. "No, Your Honor." I said. A murmur of shock went through the room. Dana looked at me, eyes wide. I do not wish to submit it, I said, my voice steady. The inventory speaks for itself. The ledgers speak for themselves. This letter, this is personal. It is the last thing my mother gave me, and I am keeping it. I put the letter in my pocket. Ethan slumped forward, putting his head on the table. He was sobbing, not from remorse, but from relief. A pathetic, broken sound. The judge looked at me for a long moment. He seemed to understand. Very well. The judge said, the letter is withdrawn, but the ruling stands. The criminal referral stands. Mr. King, you will remain in the jurisdiction pending the district attorney's review of the financial records. The judge banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. I turned around. I didn't look at the reporters. I didn't look at Aunt Linda, who was weeping in the back row. I looked at Dana. Let's go, I said. We walked down the aisle. The heavy oak doors swung open, and the bright, clean light of the afternoon flooded the hallway. I walked out onto the courthouse steps. The air was cool. The city noise was loud and chaotic and beautiful. I touched the pocket of my jacket, feeling the paper against my chest. I had lost a brother. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family. But I had kept the quilt, I had kept the necklace, and I had kept my name. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air of a life that was finally completely mine, and I started walking. Thank you so much for listening to My Well-Off Brother Demanded All My Possessions in Court. This was a story about how the truth has a way of surfacing. No matter how deep you try to bury it, I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed Claire's journey and want to hear more stories about justice, resilience, and family secrets exposed, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. And tell me in the comments, do you think Claire made the right choice by not submitting the letter? Or should she have used it to ensure Ethan's total destruction? I can't wait to read your thoughts in English. See you in the next story.